What's up, everyone? Today, I want to talk to you about episodes 3 and 4 of Hazbin Hotel's second season. But before I start, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. All right, let's dive in. These episodes, in terms of their pacing and content, are a whole level above the first two, and therefore much better. You could call this pair the setup episodes. In both, something is introduced that shows the characters' future paths and their development towards their main goal. Let's go in order. Episode 3 is a direct continuation of Episode 1. Right after Emily flew down to Charlie and told her that the whole redemption thing with her hotel actually works. And in a full-blown panic, still reeling from the loss of Penchas, she runs to her friends to share the news. She also thinks it would be a brilliant idea to immediately tell all of Pentagram City. And you know when she decides to do this? Right after she sees a slogan slandering her on an airship. And you know whose airship that was? That's right, VOX Tech's. And you know who she decides to contact to announce that redemption works? That's right, VOX Tech. Charlie is a character without a single drop of critical thinking, who would go to the very people working to ruin her reputation. And she has zero proof, other than the word of an angel who you can't just drag somewhere to give testimony. Besides, who's going to believe an angel after years of exterminations? And for crying out loud, most of her friends are enemies of the V Syndicate in one way or another. For example, Angel works for Valentino, and he'd hardly want any of the Vs to see him outside the studio. And Alastor? Alastor has been fighting with VOX for a very, very long time, and she invites his arch-nemesis over? Well, you know. Sure, you could argue she didn't know VOX didn't control the airship, and maybe Charlie didn't know about Alastar's war with him either. However, the show has never told us that anyone else controls the media besides the Vs. And Alastor and VOX's war has been going on for decades, so Charlie is either incredibly naive or has been living under a rock if she doesn't understand what's happening in the city she supposedly loves so much. So she invites the Vs to the hotel and tries to prove redemption is possible using angel dust. She follows her plan, and only after a song and a cringy representation of atoning for Penchas's sins, she finally figures out that every sinner has their own unique path, and not everyone has to sacrifice themselves to be redeemed. But it all comes down to the Vs taking all of Charlie's attempts, editing them into a humiliating montage, revealing that Angel is in hell because he killed his own father, causing a rift between Charlie and Angel, and then just leaving in triumph. Now, Episode 4 is way more interesting than Charlie's questionable attempt to save Angel Dust without understanding how redemption even works. The fourth episode is built on contrast. On one hand, you have Charlie, still banging on the same doors, trying to clear her name with dishonest people, and on the other, you have Alastor, beaten, weakened, with a goddamn open wound that hasn't healed in a month since his clash with Adam. He doesn't care about anything anymore. He used to worry about Charlie and her hotel, about his status in the overlord hierarchy, but now he can't even compete in an information war. After losing a tiny verbal spat with Lucifer, he decides to just drop everything and go to the sinner who owns his soul. And as it turns out, that sinner is Rosy. Rosy, the overlord who owns Alastar's soul. They made their contract when he was still alive. Back when Alastor was clawing his way to the top of the human world as a famous radio host, he wasn't shy about dabbling in other criminal activities. And being in a position of social and possibly financial power, he didn't want to lose it all in hell, so he decided he needed power there too, performed a ritual to contact the other side, and summoned Rosy. In exchange for some service, she gave him the power to become one of the strongest sinners in hell. The question is, what's so special about Rosy that she could give him that kind of power, and how did Alastor summon the right demon? He was clearly preparing for her specifically, judging by the roses, but how would information about Rosy even exist in the human world? Did she do something legendary in life, or is she only known to voodoo practitioners? It's an interesting question. But no matter how powerful Rosy is, she's also not entirely sane because she asked Alastor to do something specific for her, yet when he asks her to patch him and his microphone up, she just brushes him off. Why? Your tool for achieving your goals is, to put it mildly, out of commission, and you don't want to help him? And when the broken Alastor, this brilliant manipulator, is cornered with no power left, he decides to take a rather desperate step, in my opinion. They didn't reveal his exact motives, but he decides to publicly surrender to VOX, making a deal. He gives himself up, and in return, VOX leaves Charlie Morningstar alone. And this move, where the most powerful sinner surrenders to VOX, is actually meant to make two very powerful overlords clash, VOX and Rosy. Maybe not directly, but Rosy would hardly let VOX torture her pet, as she called him. Otherwise, what was the point of making him the most powerful sinner in the first place? But if Rosy is willing to sacrifice Alastor to hide her true power, well, we likely won't know her potential plans until new episodes come out. But we can question what VOX will do next. In the first episode, he set a goal to become a god, using the hotel's reputation to gather sinners for an uprising against heaven. But now he's literally abandoning the first step of his mission just to finally satisfy his obsession with Alastor. Will he find another way to manipulate sinners, or will he just be content with having Alastor as his prisoner? It's unclear for now. These were interesting episodes. Very interesting, very packed with content, even if some of that content is nonsense. In Charlie's case, that nonsense is in line with her character, so it's not too off-putting. And Alastor's storyline leaves more questions than answers. So what did you think of Alastor's backstory and his genius plans in episode 4? Let me know in the comments what you think about his scheming, evil plans. And also, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new videos.